Members of the public are advised that recommendations to council contained within this agenda can be subject to change. Applicants and other interested parties should refrain from taking any action until written advice is received confirming council's decision with respect to any particular issue. Any statement or insinuation of approval regarding any planning or development application made during an ordinary council meeting is not to be taken as notice of approval. Anyone who has an application lodged with the Shire must obtain and should only rely on written confirmation of the outcome of the application and any conditions attached to the decision made by council. Council members and the community are reminded that should an exception resolution be passed, this has the effect of making the decision to accept the officer's recommendation stated in the agenda as the council's decision without change. An audio and visual record will be made by means of live streaming of these proceedings and uploaded to the Shire's YouTube page for viewing. Acknowledgement of Country. The Shire of Harvey acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land and their continuing connection to the land, waters and community. And we pay our respects to all members of the Aboriginal communities and to their cultures and to elders both past and present. Attendance. I, as the Shire President, in accordance with Regulation 14C of the Local Government Administration Regulations 1996, approve the below listed councillors to attend this ordinary council meeting via electronic means. And I am satisfied that all councillors meet the definition of a suitable place as stipulated in Regulation 14A 4B. Councillor Burgoyne is at 1A Ferry Road at Brunswick Junction, Western Australia. You can hear us okay, Councillor Burgoyne? Okay. Procedural motion. Councillor Gillett put forth the following: that Council suspends standing orders Part A, Clause 8.5, members to indicate their intention to speak and to rise when speaking, to allow members to remain seated when speaking, to improve the quality of the audio recording for the meeting. For a second, Councillor Coleman. Is there likely to be any discussion? I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Item 2, record of apologies and leave of absence. We have an apology received from Councillor Boylan. Leave of absence. We have a valid notice of revocation motion. Councillor Gillett put forward the following: that Council's Resolution 22/011, that a leave of absence be granted to Councillor Dickinson for Tuesday 22nd of March 2022, passed at the meeting of Council held on Tuesday 22nd of February 2022, be revoked. The reason that Councillor Dickinson is able to attend the ordinary council meeting dated 22nd of March 2022 and would like to participate and vote. And the following members have signed the valid notice of revocation motion: Councillor Gillett, Councillor Campbell, Councillor Lovett, Councillor Beach and Councillor Capagretto. So I'm happy to move that. Second, Councillor Lovett. If there's any discussion, I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. 12-0, absolute majority. I, as the Shire President, in accordance with Regulation 14C of the Local Government Administration Regulation 1996, approve the below listed councillor to attend this ordinary council meeting via electronic means, and I am satisfied that all councillors meet the definition of a suitable place as stipulated in Regulations 14A 4B. Councillor Dickinson is at 10 Adelaide Terrace, East Perth, Western Australia. You hear us okay, Councillor Dickinson? Got your video, Councillor Dickinson?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you. Okay, item 3, applications for leave of absence. Councillor Coleman.
Thanks, Mr. President. I request a leave of absence from the 2nd of April to the 30th of April inclusive.
Okay. Happy to move Councillor Bromwich, second Councillor Crispin. I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Enjoy your leave of absence. Councillor Coleman.
Thank you.
Okay, item 4, reading from a book of learning and wisdom. Councillor Coleman.
Thanks, Mr. President. When
Ryan, do what the Romans do.
When we listen with only our heads, what we hear forms our opinions. When we listen with only our hearts, what we hear stirs our emotions. When we use only our gut instincts to interpret a situation, we sense it as being good or bad, right or wrong. However, when we engage all three, we are immediately gleaning truth, feeling compassion, and moving forward with understanding. From US Senator D. Martini.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. Item 5, declarations of members and officers' personal interest. As per the screen, is there any others? Councillors? Okay, item 6, response to previous questions taken on notice is nil. Public question time. Question from Ms. Christine Milne.
Good afternoon, my name's Christine Milne. I live at 25 Carleen Avenue in Vinegar. I am also the Commodore of the Harvey District Water Sports Association. And my questions are relating to the dual lease there. What is the decision-making process that governs dual-use leases within the Shire-owned facilities, and how many are there? And the second question is in reference to the grant for improvements to parts of the water sports facility in Vinegar and proposals to include allocating space for a kitchen within the surf club space. Can the Shire please advise what happened to that proposal? Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
Hand over to Acting Manager of Governance.
Through the Chair, so with respect to the decision-making process for the leases, the Council makes the original decision. Because of the type of land that the facility is on, the Minister for Lands also is required to grant consent to the leases. Any changes going forward to the lease then again needs to go through Council and get consent from the Minister.
And I'll just call on the Manager of Special Projects to answer question 2.
So regarding the kitchenette that's required, that the Commodore referred to, the Surf Lifesaving Club at Binningup have received a grant to carry on with some works on their side, and that includes a kitchenette where they can wash their mannequins, etc.
Does that adequately answer your question?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Item 8, petitions. Are there any other questions before I move on from the public? Okay, we'll move on to item 8, petitions, deputations and presentations. Neil. Item 9, announcements by a presiding member or CEO without discussion. Neil. Item 10, confirmation of minutes. We have confirmation of minutes from the Ordinary Council meeting Tuesday the 22nd of February 2022. We have someone happy to move that they be accepted as a true. Councillor Capgreco, Councillor Crispin, second. Likely to be any discussion. I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Item 11, receipt of minutes and recommendations from committee. We have the Audit Committee meeting Tuesday 15th of March 2022, and the recommendation that the minutes of the Audit Committee meeting held on Tuesday 15th of March 2022 as printed be received, and the recommendations contained therein be adopted by Council by absolute majority. Councillor Beach, Councillor Lovett. There. Any discussion? Okay, I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried 12-0, absolute majority. We have the Local Emergency Management Committee held on Monday the 14th of March 2022, and the officer recommendation that the minutes of the Local Emergency Management Committee meeting held on Monday 14th of March 2022 as printed be received, and the recommendations contained therein be adopted by Council. Councillor Bromham moving, Councillor Campbell second. Is there any discussion? I'll put the motions. Anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Item 12, reports. Shire of Harvey Standing Orders Local Law 2017 permits Council to adopt recommendations by exception, resolution or en bloc. Recommendations contained in the officer's report to be adopted by exception, resolution, with the exception of the following. So, that with the exception of item 12.1.1, 12.2.3, 12.3.1 to 12.3.2 and 12.3.4, which are to be considered separately. The officer's recommendations for items 12.2.1, 12.2.2 and 12.3.3, 12.4.1 to 12.5.5 be adopted as a council resolution. Councillor Bromham moving, Councillor Crispin second. Councillors, all happy? Put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? The motion is carried. Item 12.1.1, tender T012022 consulting services, Harvey Community Precinct design, development and documentation. Move Councillor Lovett. Seconder, Councillor Cavoni. Is there likely to be any discussion, councillors? I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? The motion is carried. Item 12.2.3, Richardson Road Waste Facility Progress Report. Councillor Campbell moving. Councillor Bromham second. Is there likely to be any discussion, councillors? I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? The motion is carried. Item 12.3.1, a use not listed, fuel recharge and convenience shop, DAP application number 335, number 38 Stanley Road, Wellesley. Move Councillor Crispin, seconder. Councillor Beach. Likely to be any discussion, councillors? With motions, anyone against the motion? Motion is carried 12-0, absolute majority. Item, okay, officer recommendation 2 of 2. Councillor Beach moving, Councillor Caboni second. Likely to be any discussion, councillors? Put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried 12-0. Okay. Item number 12.3.2, proposed vegetation clearing and horticulture lot 6 and 8 Rig Road, Myla. We have a mover and a seconder. Councillor Bromham moving, Councillor Caboni second. We have an amendment.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to
Councillor
amend
Campbell.
that. And hopefully the councillors have seen that.
Do we have a seconder?
Do I need to read that out?
Councillors want that amendment read out?
No, no,
No.
no. I've got a question, but
Yeah.
Okay.
You have a question, Councillor Caboni?
yeah. So, what is the meterage of the new buffer that you're proposing on that northern end of that block?
That's not a buffer. I'm actually asking for the retention of that native vegetation.
Right. So, in the original, in the original plan that I saw at the agenda briefing, there was a line that went across that northern section. I see it's been extended to retain vegetation. What's the meterage now of that buffer? So how much land's been taken out with the amended line? That's what I'm asking.
Through Mr. Chair. So the original one was around about 40 metres. I believe this one closer to about 180, 190 metres in total width.
Is that square metres?
In lineal width from Rig Road south. It's on that.
Do you know what the square metre is?
Square meterage, I think they reduced the available land for horticulture from 18 down to 9. Apologies, councillor, I should have remembered that one. Because it is written here. This one. If you've seen it before I have, you're more than welcome to cut in, because I do know it was quite a difference.
Yeah, through the chair. So it was going to reduce the horticulture area from about 12 hectares to 8 hectares. So that would give it about 4 hectare area.
So we have an alternative motion. Is there a seconder for the amendment? Councillor Lovett. Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Councillor Lovett. Councillors, as you can see, there are two parts to this amendment. So I will address the Lot 8 retention of the natural vegetation, which is a new condition which will be in para 2 or sub-para F of the conditions, and then the inclusion of a dust management plan as a planning condition, which is a new condition which can be found at para 2, sub-para J and Q. This amendment requires the applicant to submit an amended plan to retain the native vegetation within the northern portion of Lot 8, which is mostly marri, jarrah and peppermint. This natural vegetation type is known to provide foraging habitat for black cockatoos and the western ringtail possum, both of which are protected under the EPBC Act. The clearing of native vegetation remains one of the major threats to the flora and fauna, particularly on the Swan Coastal Plain. Conservation preservation alone will not adequately protect the native vegetation and natural habitats for our endangered fauna and flora. There needs to be a combined series of protected measures applied. And whilst at local government level we may not have a statutory responsibility, I believe it's incumbent upon us to reduce the clearing of native vegetation where possible through our planning mechanisms, and today is one of those opportunities. The second part of the amendment deals with including the need for a dust management plan as a planning condition. The applicant's operations management plan has one line relating to dust, with an action outline, and I quote, "Ensure bare soil is minimised by planting cover crops and maintaining irrigation." I acknowledge dust is a lesser issue in market gardens because the area is generally under crops for most of the year. However, I'm sure you have witnessed the dust issues at other local market garden developments, particularly when the elements are dry and windy conditions. And this is when I would see this condition being applied. This was also one of the major objections raised by the local residences. This is not an onerous condition, and it further protects the amenity of the sensitive land use in that vicinity.
Councillor Lovett, do you wish to?
This amendment addresses the habitat that we all have great concerns about, and we've heard many delegations in the last few weeks from the community regarding their environment and concerns that they have not only for themselves but for also the local habitat, trees, flora, fauna. I raised the issue last week about tourism, that we have some wonderful tourism venues in the area. If they are covered in dust, we lose tourism, and we need that desperately. Only today in the media there was a discussion about water scarcity and the reduction of water levels in underground aquifers and the pressure on bores to feed those. Large horticulture and agricultural activities that require irrigation are some of the main reasons that we have that water scarcity at the moment, and it needs to be addressed. Retention of native flora and trees was one of the methods that they stated is useful to protect that water supply. We live on the coastal strip, and we have to preserve that environment the best we can, and I think this amendment achieves that.
Is there a speaker against the amendment? Councillor Leach.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. President. Speaking against the amendment at the moment, and perhaps my comments even relate to the original report. But in speaking against the proposal, I'd like to make it clear that I am pro-agriculture, and I'm not easily swayed by submissions from residents who move into a general farming area and then complain about dust, noise, odour, etc. It's caveat emptor, or let the buyer beware. The proponent has worked hard, in my opinion, conceded a great deal to try and get the proposal over the line, including the offer to retain the tuer trees on Lot 6 to gain planning officers' support, as highlighted on page 41 of the report. The danger, as I see it, is that if we were to support the recommendations plus the amended recommendation, conditions I should say, with all the conditions and including the retention of the tuer trees, the proposal perhaps could become inviable, and now an extra 4 hectares is proposed to be taken out of the available land. I've been in these chambers many times and witnessed proponents come back seeking relaxation of conditions imposed to improve the viability of their enterprise, or even seek forgiveness when they breach the conditions. We very well may see a repeat of this in this instance. The first submission was to use 19.1 hectares of Lot 6 and 12.9 hectares of Lot 8, and a removal of a substantial amount of church trees, and that's listed on page 38, given a total of 32 hectares of
Point of
cleared
order.
land.
Councillor Campbell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I'm just referring to Lot 8 in this instance, not Lot 6 in the tulip trees.
Thank you. There was a total of 32 hectares of cleared land. The current proposal is to develop 13 hectares of Lot 6 with the retention of the trees and removal of 13 trees, which I now know that Councillor Campbell is...
I'm sorry, Mr. President, but this is Lot 8, not Lot 6.
Just speak to keep it to the amendment, please.
Yep, thank you. So with Lot 8, there was 12.9 developments, 12.9 hectares of development on Lot 8. So there was now a reduction of another 4 hectares. The total proposal is now 20% less than the original. So I regret not being able to support the proposal for the reasons stated.
Thank you. Is there any other speaker for the amendment? Councillor Drummond.
Thank you, Mr. President. I speak for the amendment. We know that there's been a substantial destruction of the forest along the Scott River Plain, and we really need to start addressing this, both from this perspective of the location we're in and overall, because the environment is, I think there's about 5% of the environment left from its original status. And the impact on the fauna is amazing. I understand Councillor Beachy's agricultural background, and I understand where he's coming from in relation to that, but I think it's based in old science, not in new science. And I think looking to the future, if we don't start looking at protecting the environment we live in, that we're going to find that even the agriculture that we have now will end up becoming unsustainable. And I think that's a real problem. And the use of the water in that area is, we know now, all the way from Bunbury down, we're getting salt ingress already through over years. Now I'm not saying the proponent is doing that, but what I am saying is we need to address these issues of deforestation now, because if we don't, we're going to end up with less agriculture in the future and less prosperous people, because their farms will be degraded.
Any other speaker against? Councillor Capgregor.
I've just got a question. The amendment that was proposed today, was that formulated in consultation with the landowner?
No, Councillor Capgregor, but it was in consultation with staff.
Thank you.
Any other speaker for the motion, the amendment? And a speaker against? Councillor Boney.
I, like Councillor Beecher, pro-agriculture as well now. Here's a family, the Patani family, that are growing food for the nation, not only the nation, but they export to the world. So where are they going to do it in the Harvey Shire? You do it in a priority horticultural zone, and that's exactly where they're proposing to do it. Now, if you don't want them to do it there, where do you want them to do it? In the streets of Brunswick or Harvey or Australind? They've bought property to grow food, to extend their property in an area that is priority horticulture zone land. Now, the neighbours, and I'm sick of councillors giving in to people and not leading by example. Every now and again in this position you have to lead. And there's people who live in that area, in that Lakewood Shores estate, that is temporary accommodation. It's not permanent accommodation, it's temporary accommodation. Now, this proposal seeks to reduce the capacity on that Lot 8 by 40%, which probably makes it unviable. You can't turn a tractor for that matter. It bewilders me what the obsession is with trees. In all the years I've been on this council, 11 years, I've never heard anyone come in here and say, save the iron ore, save the bauxite, save the ilmenite. But we're obsessed with trees for some reason. You know, I flew back from Carnarvon the other day and looked out the window of the plane, there was bush all the way back. I mean, I've got an application before for a limestone pit now in the forestry, and you know, the federal government are telling me that pine trees are forage for the black cockatoo. I mean, what next? I mean, you knock one tree down, you can plant 10 in its place. I just don't see what the obsession is with these trees. I mean, go park your car under a tulip tree for a week and see if you like it. I mean, I came home from the forest highway the other day and there was a tulip limb across the road blocking the forest highway. I mean, for the love of money, here's a family that wants to employ people locally, grow food for the nation, not only the nation, the world, in an area that is zone priority horticulture, and what do we want to do? Cut them back just to appease a few people. Well, bewilds me.
There another speaker for the motion. Against? Councillor Campbell.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. President. Simply put, the retention of this native vegetation to the north of Lot 8, as indicated, will accommodate both the conservation of a prominent area of natural vegetation for the endangered fauna and still allow for the agricultural practice to occur. And I believe this is a balanced approach and a balanced outcome. And I believe by adding the requirement for a dust management plan as a planning condition, unlike extractive industry, adds further rigour to the potential dust management within issues that may arise. So I ask councillors to consider this amendment based on those facts. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll put the amendment. Is anyone against the amendment? 5 against. That's 7-5. Okay, the amendment now becomes the substantive. Okay, is there likely to be any further discussion on the substantive? Councillor Beach.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I apologise, I probably spoke too early. I should have waited for this substantive motion to come out rather than speaking against the amendment. But what I was trying to say, that this proposal started off at approximately 32 hectares of clearing, land plus clearing. It then got reduced to 25.9 hectares because of the retention of the tulip trees. It's now down to 21.9, and these are all approximate figures based on the figures that we've been given. That's a third of the original proposal, and I don't think it's going to be viable. And as I said earlier, that I've been in this chamber many times to witness proponents seeking relaxation of conditions and even saying, well, whoops, I'm sorry, what can I do to make amends? So I think we might be setting this proponent up to fail. And I do note that given the work that the proponents have done with the staff, trying to get it over the line, but I think it should be a case of be careful what you wish for, and on that case I cannot support it as much as I'd like to.
Any other speaker for the motion? Speaker against?
Yeah, I, like Councillor Beach, can't support this in this current form. I think my advice would be to the proponent to take it to SAT and seek a better result, and I think they will. I think they will get a better result if it goes to SAT as someone who's been there many times. I think, you know, like Councillor Beach said, be careful what you wish for sometimes, and that's the advice I'd give.
Councillor Bronwyn.
A point of order there, giving advice to against the council, by a council.
Yeah.
Well, no, not really.
Okay.
As a council.
I think we've done this one, so.
Well, I'll withdraw my advice.
Okay, I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? 5 against. 5 against. The motion is carried. Item 12.3.4, transfer funds reserved for solids maintenance, Harvey Waste Facility. We have the officer recommendation. Move Councillor Campbell. Second Councillor Lovett. Is there likely to be any discussion? I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? The motion is carried 12-0, absolute majority. Okay, item 13, elected members, motion of which previous notice has been given. Yep. So, Councillor Campbell has requested the following notice of motion be placed in the ordinary council meeting agenda for 22nd of March 22. So, it's moved Councillor Campbell. We have a seconder. Councillor Bromham. Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Councillor Bromham. Councillors, in June 2021, Council was presented the Administration Operations Plan Report, an objective report by the consultant APP, which in short considered three options for the size and location of the workforce to deliver the civic functions and community services into the future. At that time, Council noted the report but did not make a decision. Since then, Council has been presented with plans, undergone community consultation, and a decision on the location of the Australian Precinct was made. We are now progressing to the community precinct reference groups, and as today we've actually approved an architect for the Harvey Precinct. However, Council has not yet made the crucial decision on the administration operational plan, which ultimately drives the future infrastructure requirements needed to house the civic functions for both the Harvey and Australian precincts. And that is the reason for this motion today. Councillors, in our deliberations today, we need to be objective and consider this motion in a strategic context, based on facts and not on the emotive aspects. It is incumbent on us today to ensure we make the right decision moving forward, and that the Shire is best placed to serve our communities and ratepayers into the future. So today I ask councillors to consider and approve option 3 of the Administration Operational Plan Report, which is the consolidated civic function located at the Australian Precinct and a downscaled administration and customer service centre located within the Harvey Precinct. As detailed in the report, option 3 presents the highest rated long-term net benefit to the Shire of Harvey. This option strategically locates the main civic function within the population and growth base of the Shire, which we can anticipate is most likely to generate significantly more demand over the coming years. Councillors, I am cognisant that this is not an easy decision for some, and I acknowledge the concerns raised via the staff survey surrounding the possible reduced level of customer service in Harvey. I cannot foresee a reduction to the level of personal customer service to the Harvey community and its surrounds, and in fact would anticipate that the requirement for access to workstations and office space, plus administrative and customer support, would remain, along with the Harvey Depot, a new library and a community hub. It is imperative that this strong customer service and economic and community development focus continues within Harvey. I do not subscribe to the concern that the consolidation of the civic function at the Australian Precinct would lessen the national or international reputation of the town of Harvey, or impact on the business icons of the area, which I would say are firmly established in Harvey. Safe to say that council-related business would be carried out in the same professional manner as of today, with staff still accessible to the ratepayers, community and businesses alike. This motion today is about deciding the location of the main civic function. It is not determining the staffing levels and or the specific location of business units, either in whole or in part. That is an operational matter for the CEO. However, I have no doubt that Council may provide the CEO with some guidance in this regard. To allay any concerns, I see that this is a staged approach, coinciding with the infrastructure development of the Australind and Harvey precincts alike, and ensuring that there is no interruption to the provision of services anywhere within the Shire. Councillors, the status quo is not an option. To run with option 2 would also require us to clearly articulate to the community and the ratepayers the rationale for choosing not to locate the majority of the workforce where the largest population exists and the future growth is occurring. Option 3 presents greater service capacity where demand is required and where the significant urban growth is occurring.
Councillor Bronwyn, wish to say anything in seconder?
I'll hold fire for comment.
You're a speaker against the motion. Councillor Conlon.
Thanks, Mr. President. And I thank Councillor Campbell for drawing us attention to the facts that this should be fact-based. The Shire of Harvey Administration Operations Plan report by APP was tabled at Council as a confidential item 22nd of June 2021. The 59-page report was comprehensive and provided a case for retaining both Australind and Harvey administrative centres, as well as an analysis of locating one administration centre in either Harvey or Australind, with a satellite office in the second of the chosen sites. The report's key findings resulted in 3 options. Option 1 is the status quo, administration sites in both towns. Running 2 full centres, one in Harvey and one in Australind, results in a significantly higher net cost to Council and the Shire of Harvey community, although it does offer a greater level of flexibility for Council staff, thereby avoiding a reduction in employment or economic activity in either Harvey or Australind. On this point, I do agree with Councillor Campbell that that is not a realistic option. Option 2 sees the main administration office in Harvey. The report highlights that this option results in the lowest estimated capital expenditure and operating cost over the next 20 years. This option draws additional employment to the township of Harvey. The consolidation of Council's admin centre within the township of Australind results in higher capital and ongoing costs than option 2, as reported by APP. Option 3 suggests that the greater service capacity would be situated where demand is greater and allows access to a larger labour pool within the Shire of Harvey and neighbouring Bunbury. The report does not address labour pools generated from Yarloop, Coconut and neighbouring Waroona. The report concludes if the admin centre is in Harvey, this will mean a reduction in service capacity within Australind, which is more strategically located within the population and growth base of the Shire, and therefore likely to generate significantly more service demand over the coming years. However, the demographic in Australind are largely mobile technology users, and therefore the identified demand for more services over coming years in a face-to-face environment is highly likely to occur online rather than face-to-face, which significantly deflates this argument. Drawbacks under option 3 include the reduction of service capacity in the Harvey township, with the associated reduction in employment compounding the soft economic conditions and declining population growth experienced in the township at this present time. The highest rate net benefit to the Shire of option 3, as listed on page 27 of the report, is based on a projected increase in service capacity within the Australind township to support projected demand and potentially greater access to labour pools in Australind and Bunbury. This is despite the projected higher capital and operating costs than option 2 and the available labour pools available in Coconut, Yarloop and neighbouring Waroona. The report identifies that the results between option 2 and 3 are very close, and then suggests that the depot and engineering functions operating from Harvey depots are likely to remain operating from these depot locations. The report concludes that the core concerns towards removing the administration function from Harvey include maintaining services for the Department of Transport agency function and customer service to support the Harvey demographic. Additionally, the town of Harvey would experience negative economic impacts, which was confirmed through the economic analysis. From a cost-benefit perspective, consolidation to one location yields significantly reduced costs for the Shire over the next couple of decades, and suggests that customer services, particularly in Harvey, were identified as a critical function for the Shire. Given the Shire's strong historic connections with Harvey and the continued importance of economic development initiatives in Harvey, retaining a strong customer service presence and economic community development focus in Harvey will be important. The report does not assess the political and community impacts associated with a potential move away from the Shire's historic home. Harvey District is in the centre of the Shire's boundaries and is well placed to address our rural north, our coastal and our rural south communities with somewhat similar commute times. Neither does the report address all of the on-costs such as new stationery, advertising, etc. A decision by this council to move the main administration function away from Harvey is contradictory to our own strategies of community participation goal, as we've not provided the public with a balanced and objective information to understand this potential decision, nor have we upheld our promise to keep the community informed. The risk theme profile identified is high, the consequences being financial and reputational to council and to the Shire. It appears to me that this particular debate's been going on for many years, long before my time on council. I believe this raised its head again when Lee Simonson Architects were engaged to undertake an architectural report on Harvey Shire offices. The report was produced in March 2020 and backed up by the Property Condition and Inspection Report from OBAN and SCA dated 18th of February 2021. The Simonton report stated that the Harvey offices posed a number of physical, mental and occupational health and safety risks to staff. The report recommended that the Shire offices in Harvey be demolished with sympathetic consideration for the heritage buildings and new offices built as soon as possible. In these changing times, we don't have the capacity to undertake all of our wonderful and ambitious projects simultaneously, and I believe the waters have been muddied by the Australian Community Project and this ensuing debate. I would like to see Council vote against the motion and agree to retain Harvey as the most central, most cost-effective option for the main administration of the Shire and move forward on rebuilding the Harvey Shire offices as a matter of urgency for staff comfort and welfare.
Any speaker, another speaker for the motion? Councillor Lovett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This argument can't be won on emotional history. It can only be won on the future needs of this Shire. Looking at the statistics from our own strategic community plan, the populations of Leschnell, Australind, Brunswick Junction, South and coastal communities totals 19,142 of the Shire's 27,975 population. Harvey and rural north comprise 5,042. That's a significant number of people in that area, over 5,000, and they deserve to have access to Shire services in the town of Harvey. The 19,000, however, that live, work and spend their lives in the remainder of the Shire could expect to have a Shire administration building 4 times larger based on their population. Therefore, the main administration building being located in what is essentially the CBD of Australind needs to happen. The 2 biggest retail centres of the Shire are located in Australind, and people from the north of the Shire travel to those on a regular basis to attend shops and facilities that they don't have in that area. The northern end of the Shire has 4 schools located in Harvey and Yarloop. However, many students travel on transport to the southern part for their education. This then sets up their work, sport and social lives for the future. So our students of today are going to be using this area in the future. The Shire looks to reach 37,860 by 2031. That growth is going to largely happen in the southern part of the Shire due to land availability and other factors. In researching this statement of support, I found an article on 10 things to consider when locating a business, and we are a business. We provide services to people for a fee, which is essentially their rates. One of the top items was demographics. Who uses our services, where are they located? 19,000 versus 5,000 answers that question. Foot traffic. Being located in one of the main retail areas answers that question. Accessibility and parking. The parking provided in this location is already user-friendly and can be enhanced. Proximity to other businesses and services. This leads me to my next point. Our Shire is part of the southwest zone of councils. Our colleagues are in Dardana, Bunbury, Capel and Collie, etc. They're not in the Peel zone. Our staff travel to meetings to the south, and if we are going to be environmentally sustainable, we need to locate our main administration centre closer to our collegiate shires. Add to that Australians' proximity to major employers of Tronics, South 32, the Binningup diesel plant, and even the Busselton Airport, that for FIFO workers, it makes even more sense to have our main administration centre close to them. This research and information has already been done by people with much higher qualifications and levels of knowledge than me. And it's been done by the consultants who provided the report to us almost a year ago. We have had this information and we endorsed a report based on this information almost a year ago. It's time to move this project forward based on facts, statistics and evidence.
Any other speaker against? Councillor Cavani.
Well, I speak against this motion, not for the reasons that have already been outlined, because this motion deals purely within the Shire boundaries. So I come from another tack where it's time that we look that amalgamation should be looked at again. I think it's only common sense that any area west of the new Bunbury Outer Ring Road should be all in one shire. Now I know that's not popular. I know that's out with the ratepayers and that mightn't be the most popular thing to say at the moment. But because some colonialists drew a line on a bit of paper 60 years ago, is that still relevant today? Now I think it's absurd that we're thinking building a building here, or a $20 million office building or whatever it's going to be worth. You don't get much change out of that these days. When the Shire of Dardanup's going to build the same building not even 4 kilometres over the river. I think it's absurd that the City of Bunbury built a new Shire depot 3 kilometres away from the Shire of Dardanup's new council depot. I mean, where's the resource sharing? It's just absurd that shires are spending all this money within so few short kilometres of one another. It's not fair on the ratepayers, it's not fair on the state taxpayer. So I think it's time, in my view, that the state government, and I would have thought with the current Labor government who control both houses of Parliament, might have grasped this and taken it on, but obviously there's a lack of leadership these days in state and federal governments to do these sorts of unpopular things. But I think it's logical that if you're talking about saving money for ratepayers or taxpayers or whatever, that this whole local government thing needs to be revisited all again, because it's becoming, with rate increases in various shires, which are becoming unsustainable, and that's probably the most thing that people say to me when I get around the community, especially around rate time, is why we're putting the rates up so much. And we've all each side's trying to provide individual services, and to be building monuments to ourselves in so short few kilometres to others is ridiculous.
Speaker for the motion or pro amalgamations or anyone? Speaker against? Councillor Capagreco.
As you all may know, I'm very passionate about my town, Harvey. So, in regard to the option 3, I do not support it, the motion. I believe that the main office of the Harvey Shire office must remain in Harvey town site. The relocation of this office will be detrimental to the town. It affects the town's history going forward, and something that we really should not be tampered with. I quote one of the respondents from one of the consultation report that was conducted. This is the person that decided that, and he's quoting saying, if the main office was in the spiritual heart of the Shire, being Harvey would mean that a large new office would not be required in Australia. This is just some person who's filled out a survey. And he's saying here, the heart of the Shire is Harvey. And we all turn to consultants for advice, right? One thing that I believe that consultants don't have is that they've got no roots in our Shire. They've got no roots in Harvey, they've got no roots in Australia. These people will just take the data and configure it together and come up with a graph and report, something that we need to. But they've got no passion about what we're doing. They've got no connection to the people who settled in this shire, who settled in the town of Harvey. And that these people have got some kind of dignity. They're saying, we are in the Harvey Shire and the Shire office was in Harvey. I also would like to point out that, you know, I think that if you look through the report, it also will impact on the future employment and future of our current employees, as outlined on page 54 of the APP report, where it states, and I quote, "The preferred strategy resulting from this study was that the future administration would be consolidated in Australian. However, a satellite public service counter function would remain in the town of Harvey. And in terms of spatial allocation, the staff located in the Harvey administration facility would be in addition to the overall Shire requirements." So what are we saying here? We're saying that future, down the road, that we don't need those people working in the Harvey office? Because that's what the consultant is saying. If you look at the report, page 54, that's exactly what the consultant is confirming to. So I cannot support it. I just don't think that's the right thing to do. And I think there's a lot of money to be spent. I do not disagree that there should be an office in Australia as well as Harvey. So I think that overall we need to be looking at the budget, saving where we can, and not making a decision because a consultant has said to us, you need to close down Harvey just to a counter, right? And those people may not be required anymore. Let's build one in Australia. And I support the fact that Harvey is a centre, right? It's the centre of our shire. Everyone's got access to it. We've had access to it for years. When you walk into those shire chambers in Harvey next time, have a look at the people who are on the honour boards. Those people who spent their time to support the Harvey Shire, right? All those people that came before us, they'll be turning in their graves.
Any other speaker for Councillor Bromwell?
I'll just take myself. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President and councillors, I just wanted to start off by addressing some of the comments made by other councillors. I'd like to thank Councillor Carboni for his amalgamation pitch, which I'm not against. The Shire of Harvey could not afford, the town of Harvey, in fact, could not afford the maintenance of their present infrastructure without the bank, which is Australian. That's 80% of the population in the Shire. That's just a fact. All right? Councillor Cabrigego, passion. I applaud your passion and your love of Harvey. But you actually became a councillor for the Shire of Harvey, and you have to make your decisions based on those things, not on the town of Harvey. And I say, you know, great passion, but it's not good governance. Councillor Coleman, you talked about planning, but I believe, you know, we've got to look at the long term, not the short term plan. In the short term, you're correct in what you're saying. But in the long term, this is where the growth of the Shire is. Now, if you don't want amalgamation, if you want to keep the bank, which is Australian, if you want to support the people of the north end of the Shire, you want to have a decent office here, and you want to have administration here, otherwise Australian will go somewhere else, and then you'll be left with debt.
Councillor Bromwell, can I just, maybe if we just address without naming specific councillors?
Oh, sorry.
And just keep
my apologies.
to the point. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, I'll go back here. I just thought I'd say a few words about what has been said. Mr. President and councillors, I know for some of you councillors this will be a hard decision, but it is not one that has not been made before. The Shire of Dardanup realised that Eaton was becoming the financial hub of their Shire and moved their administration there over 20 years ago. Eaton has been growing ever since and provided the Shire of Dardanup with growth opportunities that more conservative shires failed to capitalise on, and I'm talking about us. I was at fault in some of those decisions because I was basing my ideas on the past rather than the future. Our shopping centres stagnated while others went ahead. I now regret those decisions based on old-fashioned family values and ideas of community. They just do not cut it in a global marketplace of today and the future. And other councillors know that because they work in businesses that work in that marketplace. When I became a councillor, I swore an oath to be a councillor for the whole Shire. To base my decision on facts and deliver outcomes that benefit most shareholders and ratepayers. To ensure we fiscally, responsibly by ensuring a decision made provide outcomes that benefit our communities when I am long gone. The benefits of these decisions are financial, provide savings in staff time, staff travel, and reducing the travel times for 80% of our population while not reducing services for the other 20%. It provides a heart for the commercial hub of our Shire. This has been done before when the Shire administration moved from Brunswick to Harvey, because that's when Harvey was a commercial hub. Of the Shire. We all know that Australind is the bank that makes many of the services we provide in our other locations possible. Without Australind financial input, these locations could not afford the upkeep on the facilities they currently have. Something Darwin realised all those years ago. As a council, we have to ask good questions, investigate opportunities, and consult broadly. And we use expert consultants to provide us with unbiased opinions. We now need to have the courage to follow that advice, for it was clear, concise and accurate. And the reason we use consultants from outside is for that very reason, because they're not involved, because they understand the business context around what we're doing and how to best put forward and use our finances for the people of the future. It's not about us and it's not about the past. I would ask you all to put aside your personal needs, loyalties and emotional connections and vote for this motion and set our Shire up for a force in the southwest that can deliver the opportunities we all desire for our children. Let's make the Shire of Harvey a place to grow and thrive in, a place for a better lifestyle, a growth area where potential for industry, commerce, aged care and tourism, a place where others will want to come and live. Now, I feel that by doing this financially, by being fiscally responsible and supporting this motion, we will achieve that. And I believe it will provide growth for all our communities, not just Australian. Thank you.
Any other speaker against the motion? Councillor Beach.
Thank you, Mr. President. I can remember when the bank was supported by the rural north and Australind was nothing more than 2 sand dunes and a few houses on the Old Coast Road. So how did we get here with all the development in the south when the admin has been driven from Harvey? It appears to me, if it ain't broke, why try and fix it? There is a lot of socio-economic demographic in the north. You take out one of the economic drivers of that area, being the admin office in Harvey, that economic driver will leave. I think we should leave it the status quo as it is. It works well, and in my opinion, it ain't broke.
Any other speaker for? Councillor Crispin.
I'd like to respect what everyone's said so far, but we're a Shire and we need to look at this via the facts. The facts are in that report, the report that we've all read, and I hope that we haven't taken our personal passion involved in that, because at the end of the day, the Shire is a business, and we need to respect the 19,000 ratepayers that are living in the Australind area and give them something that they can come to, but with respect, as the motion stated, that the Shire of Harvey will still be getting something there. They'll still have that community presence. And as another councillor mentioned earlier on, at some point in time, the chambers originally the shires were originally in Brunswick. At that point, it was moved to Harvey, and we do need to look at it as a logical thing, a business plan, and realistically a strategic plan to the future, based on what the report says. And we're not making this vote based on what we have as a passion as of today. We're having a vote based on the future, and the future of our community, and basically our community's kids and their kids, and what's going to happen in the growing areas.
Any other speaker for Councillor Dickinson?
Thank you, Mr. President. During the last year, we've workshopped with the pros and cons of various proposed locations of the administration operations, whether they be Harvey or Australind. And this has been used to formulate the reports that have been presented to Council. During this process, councillors and staff listed the pros and cons of each site. And the things that I recollect were considered were public transport availability, pedestrian traffic, usage, availability of parking, ownership of the land, whether the Shire owned it or whether it was purchased, the facilities that are in the vicinity of the proposed sites or the existing site, whether the Shire facilities or commercial attractiveness for future staff procurement was beneficial, the availability of retaining and attracting staff, travel for staff and councillors for work and for meetings. These were all major considerations that were presented. Also, where the major businesses of the Shire is conducted, both now and for future expansion, the current and projected population growth of the Shire, and the historical reasoning of the current location of the Shire facilities. The Shire is not solely responsible for the vibrancy of the centres, whether it be Australind or Harvey. This is also due to the community and the landholders in the locality and how they encourage the use of their properties. Both Harvey and Australind have seen change, a lot of change. And this is due to the way that the community has changed, of how we use our community facilities, how we do business, how we shop, how we bank, how we use our recreation time. This has all had either positive or negative impacts on both localities, Harvey and Australind. I acknowledge that option 3 will mean more change, but I believe that option 3 presents the most beneficial change for the outcome of our growing Shire. Harvey is the geographic heart of the Shire, but it is not the heart of the population of the Shire. I think we need to look at the facts that have been presented to us. We need to consider our ratepayers and our residents of the Shire, and therefore I support the motion put forward by Councillor Campbell today.
Any other speaker against? Speaker for? Councillor Campbell. Sorry, Francis. Councillor Burgoyne, do you have your hand up?
I did. I can't find my little hand.
That's all right, fire away.
And I hope I don't drop out again, as I have done for about the last 15 minutes. So I've not heard much of the debate. But what I do know is that we have placed a lot on future growth, but we don't really know where that future growth is going to be. 20 years ago, we wouldn't have thought the future growth was in Australind. And by today's standards, Treedale Farm would never have been able to be subdivided. So who knows what's going to happen in the future? So while you cast, I was going to say aspersions, but that's the wrong word, cast aspirations, I guess, that the whole future of the Shire of Harvey is going to be in Austral End. Just bear in mind the fact that things change. And what I'm thinking is that we shouldn't be putting all our eggs in one basket, but we should be sharing that basket equally between Harvey and Austral End, because we don't know. We don't know. So let's really build for the future. Build them equally, not throw it all in one spot. Build staged stuff, but build it to be equally as manageable from Harvey as it is from Austral End. In these days of COVID, half our staff have been working from home for a while, and we turn around tomorrow and work from home. We built a huge building in Austral End, and suddenly we have another COVID and no one's in it. If we really want to future-proof, let's do equally shared between Harvey and Austral End. Staged so that the impact of the dollar value is not great and in one hit, but rather staged and done over the whole lot, and done properly. Let's face it, we're looking at dollars and cents, how much we're going to spend, where we're going to get our biggest bang for our buck. Let's do it properly. Let's not muck around, let's do it properly. So I'm going to speak against this motion, because I see it as putting all eggs in one basket. Thanks for the opportunity.
Now the speakers. Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Councillors, the intent of this motion is not about being reflective on how business has been delivered in the past, and it's not about one community gaining or another community losing. In regards to developing our civic function equally between Austral End and Harvey, I would suggest that that does not give us economy of effort, it doesn't give us any economy of scale, and it would see the duplication of services in both locations, which does not make sense. Some councillors may place more weight in their decision today based on history, and we've heard that. And I would guess similar issues were discussed 60 odd years ago when the decision was to move from Brunswick to Harvey in 1961 was resolved, and that Harvey was seen as the growth area in the Shire at the time. Now, Austral End is the growth area of the time, and we need to be cognizant of that and move our workforce down here in order to support that. The consolidation of the civic function in the Austral End precinct is not forsaking or closing down Harvey. It's about future-proofing our Shire. It's about ensuring we are in the best possible position to serve our growing communities now and into the future. And that may be different in 60 years' time, but we're not here to plan 60 years in advance. It's about ensuring we are in the best possible position to serve our growing communities into the future, and it's about ensuring we as a council provide clear and concise direction to our CEO and to the community. To not support this motion today is to ignore the consultant's objective report findings, it's to ignore the economics, and it's to ignore the strategic importance of the decision. So I ask councillors to support option 3 today, and I also ask that the councillors' names be recorded for the vote today as well. Thank you.
Okay, I'll put the motion. Is there anyone against the motion? 4, 5 against. Motion is carried. 7-5. Item 15, questions by members of which due notice has been given is nil. Item 16, reports of members to be sent in by councillors for inclusion in the minutes, which we have. Okay, item 17, new business of an urgent nature introduced by decision of the meeting is nil.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, Councillor Cavani.
I don't know that one councillor can dictate whether other councillors' names should be in the minutes or not. Yeah, can I get clarity on that?
Yeah. Standing orders state if a member of council or a committee specifically requests that there be recorded his or her vote, or the vote of all members present on a matter voted on a meeting of the council or committee, the person presiding is to cause the vote or votes, as the case may be, to be recorded in the minutes. So it's if a member of council.
Yes. So I just want to clarify.
Okay, item 18, matters behind closed doors is nil. Just before we close, just like to acknowledge the work that Liz has done in stepping into the governance role. We got flowers and chocolates. I think it's testament to staff as a whole who have gone above and beyond in the last couple of years and got outside of the comfort zone and have probably taken on a fair bit of workload across the whole organisation. So just not picking on one, but I'm sure you've enjoyed your role in governance and you love doing leases. I was looking for a Bible on how to draw up the ultimate lease, but I'll keep my eyes out. So yeah, thanks very much, Liz, and enjoy your last week in the role before you go back and organise planning for us. So,
Well done.
well done. So I'm and PK, I'm sure you're sitting by there watching Zoom, so all the best, mate, and speedy recovery. The work's piling up. So without any further to do, we'll close the meeting.